Good evening, members and officers. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting, 27th of January 2022. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the Green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones and do not make or receive calls whilst the meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will subsequently be broadcast on the internet. I don't believe anybody's in the gallery that would be filming tonight. So the following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillor Yates and Councillor Whitehead. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Auburn, which item?
It's the one
Oh. So you're well rehearsed on that one then, Councillor.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It was in relation to the
asset management.
Number 5.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Councillor Auburn and. Okay. Councillor Austin, item 4. Okay, we'll move on. Apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence? No, we're all here. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare on the items of business on the agenda this evening? That's a no, Charles. Minutes of the previous meeting. To approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet held on the 13th of January 2022. A copy is attached to the agenda pack. I propose that we approve the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Do members agree? Agree. Item 4 is the draft budget 2022 to 23 and medium-term financial strategy 22 to 26. To introduce Councillor David Saunders.
Thank you, Chairman. This report presents the budget for 2022-23 along with the capital programme as previously provided to Cabinet. It has, however, been updated to reference the recommendations put forward by the Overview and Scrutiny panel at their meeting on the 18th of January for Cabinet consideration. It is now well versed that we were forecasting a significant budget gap, but with a planned and cautious approach combined with an efficient savings plan, we have been able to balance our budget. Despite what may seem like a lengthy and complicated process, this level of planning is critically important. It's how we continue to deliver the services that matter to people and protect and support our most vulnerable residents. Planning our finances in this way means we are on the right track for balancing our budget in the forthcoming years. Our balanced budget position has been supported in part by the very welcome additional funding that has been provided to us by government for next year. However, much of this funding is temporary and therefore careful consideration will be given to its use. Allocating these resources to the most appropriate and prudent way will help ensure that this authority moves into the medium term on the most sound financial footing possible. This is the prudent and responsible thing to do. It is with this in mind that we have carefully considered the recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny panel as laid out in section 11 of this report. The Council is committed to the delivery of a strategic response to the temporary accommodation needs of homeless families. We have already committed £1.6 million to the development of our first temporary accommodation project, providing 8 self-contained flats. And following the completion of this project, we'll consider further projects to build a larger and more cost-effective portfolio of properties. That's our ambition. This approach will be the best way to secure long-term savings in the costs of temporary accommodation. the relatively small amount available from the new homes bonus would not be sufficient to deliver a further scheme, and its use at this stage to offset the costs of borrowing is considered to be more prudent, in our opinion, as an option. We are exploring external funding options, and additional borrowing could also be considered in the future when a further temporary accommodation option is identified. Unfortunately, we haven't identified anything at this point in time. The funding required to address the lift issues has been estimated to be in excess of £230,000. In addition to this, you need to consider the ongoing maintenance and management. As such, we are considering and pursuing other long-term sustainable funding options for the repair and ongoing maintenance and again management of our coastal lifts. With regards to the reserve transfer for climate change projects, the monies that sit in the risk reserve will be available for such projects on an as and when needed basis. Furthermore, we are also looking in this area for external funding opportunities too. As such, we do not see it necessary to transfer an amount to a dedicated earmarked reserve. Accordingly, and having given the matter due consideration, we will not be adjusting the budget to accommodate any of the 3 recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, and will therefore be recommending the budget to Council for approval in its current form. I move the recommendations, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Speaking under Rule 20.1, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Saunders, for responding to the comments from Overview and the proposals from Overview and Scrutiny. So, on the 2022 to 23 budget, first of all, I think we are happy to hear that climate internal project management monies could be available from the risk management reserve. I think my question here will be, is this going to be minuted just for the record? Because I think that's the right move, and I think I'd like to say thank you for that. I think the name change, well, I'm happy to let that slide if it can be used, so thank you for that. On the other issues, I think we continue to state that the putting money into temporary accommodation now would provide a balanced budget. We wouldn't need to find additional savings in the budget. When it comes to why we are so passionate about this, we think it will reduce our ongoing costs for temporary housing in the future. And I guess our response to properties not being readily available to purchase is that, have we really tested that? Because I think that's still our position, is that we still think that £400,000 plus could be used to find temporary housing now. And the only additional piece of information I'd like to bring tonight is that as we stand, as Councillor Saunders has said, it is the plan to have the current plan to have 8 temporary housing flats which are currently being built, and they'll be managed by one temporary housing manager. And I think the quicker we can build new properties, the better to make the full use out of that resource within the council. So from our side, and lastly, just on the lifts, obviously we put forward 125,000. We're now hearing a different number, but we do believe that fixing the lifts is in the best interest, and we look forward to hearing how quickly this can be done through other means. But yeah, we still believe funding using this new homes bonus opportunity to get the list fixed for Ramsgate and the Viking Bay is the way forward. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing a response on those issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Perhaps Chris Bundell could just clarify the terminology around the reserves and then hand back to Councillor Saunders, so that can be minuted, and then hand back to Councillor Saunders to respond on the other issues.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the risk management reserve is a fairly broad reserve that can be used for a broad range of purposes, and the governance and approval processes are exactly the same to take money from that reserve. So there's it's purely a terminology or linguistic sort of issue to create a separate reserve.
Thank you for clarifying that, and I'm sure, Charles, you've captured that in the minutes. So over to you, Councillor Saunders, for the remainder of the comments.
Yes, thank you. I'm again happy that that point is minuted. I'd like to thank the Labour group for their comments, and I'm personally very sorry that at this point in time, given the situation with regards to the budget gap, we're unable to do more than we can with the monies that are available. With regards to the lift, we have been working on a strategy. I can say that monies have been pledged towards that strategy. It's a long-term strategy. Members who have heard me before will know that as far as the Viking Bay lift is concerned, I feel very passionate about that lift, having been a member of the Broadstairs Millennium Group who lobbied very, very hard in the late 90s to have that lift built. So I can wax lyrically in the same way as Councillor Everett did with regards to the Ramsgate lift, which I do appreciate is a historic unit, not a building, and we'll continue to work on the strategy. As I say, substantial monies have been pledged towards that situation. We've received some sponsorship from interested parties, and we will continue to get to a situation where we have the money, A, to get to the lifts repaired and to operate those lifts long term rather than the short-term situation that we've experienced in recent years. Short-term in terms of the Viking Bay lift, unfortunately as far as the Ramsgate lift is concerned, I think it's a major repair, as we all appreciate, and the sooner we can get this strategy up and running and come up with the funds, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. And I'd just like to reassure you all of the Shadow Cabinet and members that our Cabinet are constantly on the lookout for land that would be suitable, and we do have social housing very high on the list. We do appreciate that the more housing we can provide for the homeless takes the bill away from the private sector, that we're forced to go down that route. And obviously for compassionate reasons where children have to be moved out of the area for their education, we understand all of that, and we are looking at various sites that could be suitable, and I'm sure Councillor Jill Bayford can assure everybody that that is one of our big priorities to look at that. So social housing is definitely up there amongst our priorities, but we need to do it in a structured way that can have the maximum amount of impact. Just to reassure you from that point of view. Speaking again, the next speaker under 20.1 is Councillor Whitehead.
Oh, I think we're on. Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Saunders. I wish to be brief, frankly, as it's something I manage rarely, and this evening seems to be an apt point to try, considering the length of my contribution at overview and scrutiny on this issue. As members and Cabinet members will be aware, I spoke at overview and scrutiny to propose partial usage of the New Homes bonus in a housing capacity, to extend our in-house temporary housing provision through the acquisition of property, both to reduce stress on our community in terms of reducing out-of-area placements, and reduce our ongoing costs, both in terms of property acquisition and in long-term reduction of costs related to using private providers for temporary accommodation. We will in the future need all forms of accommodation within our portfolio, both individual and larger units, and our residents will benefit from all. I always work alongside officers and utilise their knowledge and experience, and I strongly believe that this is, long-term, a more cost-effective choice than simply setting aside the New Homes bonus, which was received in no small part due to the excellent work of housing and our empty homes team in bringing back 252 empty homes into use. I know that the proposed amendment is socially, logically and financially prudent. I have not been approached by Cabinet to discuss this further, although I always welcome discussion and debate of different approaches and ideas. And as the recording of overview and scrutiny has not been uploaded as yet, even though later meetings have, to be certain that my points are understood in the context of this meeting, I need to speak. From a democratic standpoint, it would also be helpful to know when the recording of the last overview and scrutiny meeting will be uploaded, as many residents use our recordings to follow the workings of our council, and to have a return to previous business without a public record of the previous business makes our processes unclear and potentially confusing. I believe strongly in the proposed amendment, and as everyone in this chamber knows, if I believe in something, I work for it, and I fight for it if necessary. I have put in the work on this, and I will continue to. But I hoped not to have to fight for it, because I believe that the vote to take this forward within overview and scrutiny, and the acknowledgement of Cabinet that it was sensible to consider it, speaks to its merits. We have to expand our in-house temporary accommodation in all forms, both to help residents and to reduce extensive and expensive future costs. I believe in the strength of my proposal, as I believe the social and economic advantages are clear. I can and will happily argue for them for as long as necessary, but I had hoped very much to not have to. I thank Cabinet for their willingness to consider this proposal and its merits, for I know without doubt that those merits are significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I will check up about the overview and scrutiny. I can't answer now as to why that hasn't been loaded.
Thank you.
I will ask or Charles, if you could ask the technical about that, or if you know the answer.
You mean regarding the uploading of the minutes?
The uploading of the overview and scrutiny meeting that night, the video, the recording.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that it's not yet on our website. I will have a
we'll
look
check it
and
out. Okay.
check it out. Yeah.
If you'd like to respond, Councillor Saunders, to I don't think there was a question in there as much
No,
as to reiterate why we didn't actually include the proposal in the budget.
I'd like to agree with what much of that Councillor Whitehead has said, particularly with regards to our housing team. Dare I say, our award-winning housing team. They do a superb job, and we did consider it in depth and in discussion with the budget holder, and came to the conclusion that the sums weren't sufficient for us to pursue the route that we feel, and the housing team, I have to say, feel is the right route to take with regards to that amount of money. Yes, in normal terms, it is a significant amount of money, but in reality, when we're looking to obtain, refurbish and modify accommodation or build from scratch, it really isn't sufficient, and it's better used in the way that we propose, I'm afraid. Other than that, yes, do keep on our backs, as it were. We know the situation. I understand the situation. I could go on and tell you how the situation has improved, believe it or not, from my childhood days, when people were forced to go into accommodation that was operated by a notorious man called Rackman. You probably won't know. So I do understand the situation. I do come from a 3 up, 2 down situation with outside toilet, no electricity, etc. So I do understand the situation. We're very sympathetic. I won't go on because Steve thinks I'm going to get my violin out any minute, but trust me, we do understand the situation. We'll be looking at it very, very closely, but do keep persuading us and reminding us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak under 20.1, Councillor Austin. Sorry, Bob. Eyes are not good tonight. Carry on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say an outside toilet, sheer luxury.
Oh, well, that was worth waiting for, Bob.
I'm not sure I can follow that.
No. That's what his neighbours said. Anyway, before we get too lower down the chain on this one, yes, sorry, to speak under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Saunders. I'm here representing the Green Group. I'm the only sad person who didn't have something else to be doing this evening. And I'm here, I suspect, in exactly the spirit that Councillor Saunders mentioned, about keeping on at you, about the issues in front of us as we see them. We supported the amendment at overview and scrutiny. We still think those were good ideas. We still are very concerned about the housing situation, as I know everybody is. I mean, in my own ward, we've got 3 new couples living in their cars this week. And I'm sure that is reflected in other wards across the Isle. It's a real concern, and I do support Councillor Whitehead's view on this. I think it is eminently sensible, but we accept that it's a difficult decision and Cabinet has had to make the decision they've made. On the matter of climate emergency provisions, we are happy to hear that that there is flexibility in the budget. We're happy to hear that external funding is being sought. We are concerned that opportunities for external funding in this field have been missed in the past, and we're really keen to work with officers and members to make sure that we don't miss those opportunities in future. And we would want to keep on saying we need desperately in this area people who are trained to retrofit housing, and anything that the council can do to bring in money or set aside money to help partner organisations, contractors and our own staff to develop those skills would be immensely valuable. Secondly, that we do feel that when we're investing in waste freighters, we should be looking at an electric freighter for at least one of those to pilot that. And we have examples through the Association of Green Councillors of small authorities with limited budgets that are doing that successfully, that we would be very happy to pass on. Likewise, with the current issue going on about green waste, the nippiness of small freighters, it gives us flexibility. We do appreciate that the new freighters are to deal with current issues and not to expand provision, but there is potential there, I think, to look at smaller, more cost-effective in the end vehicles that can manage our narrow streets with the increasing numbers of parked cars as more and more people work from home. So we're really keen to look at that, and we're also keen to understand the business case, if that can't be managed now, that we feel it would be really helpful for members generally to have a more detailed understanding of the business case for and against on that, and so that we can have a look at how that changes over time. And we have examples of all those things available from other councils if it's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I think before I hand over to Councillor Saunders, that Councillor Jill Bayford would also like to speak about the housing.
Thank you. Yeah, I want everybody to know how in such depth that we discussed the proposals. I believe the housing team under Bob Porter demonstrate a measured and prudent approach to planning housing in Thanet. They manage the HRA budget well and are resourceful in funding projects. Temporary accommodation is very important to us, and we feel its provision will benefit from this planned approach rather than using this relatively small amount of money available, which would only fund 2 units. We are also committed to helping to provide stability by adding to our reserves. Thank you.
I think Councillor Bob Bayford would like to speak about his area there, and then I'll hand back to you, Councillor Saunders, as the portfolio to sum it all up, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just addressing the issue of the trucks. I mean, you're absolutely right. As far as a decision about whether we have an electric truck or not, economics are going to come into play there. You know, they are generally much more expensive, and I think you've already sort of agreed that you understand that the 2 vehicles that we're looking to replace are in fact very old vehicles. You know, they're past their useful life. They're being kept going on a sort of wing and a prayer, and we need the large vehicles because it's to actually support the waste and recycling service, which, as you know, is sort of creaking at the seams anyway. So, you know, we will be going ahead with that. As far as the smaller vehicles concerned, I mean, certainly, you know, wouldn't say that we wouldn't look at anything like that, that's for sure. But in a conversation I had recently, it was pointed out that in fact the smaller trucks are in fact significantly less cost efficient than the larger ones. So they're, you know, and happy to discuss at some stage business case for things. And of course, you know, it's a good opportunity for me to assure all the council really that we are really committed to this green agenda, the climate change agenda. We've got a very active CAG, which is meeting again on Monday. At the next cabinet meeting, we'll be bringing forward recommendations that came from the last CAG. And I've had long conversations with the climate change officer, Hannah Scott, where I've tried as much as I can to reassure her that if there are valid projects, we will do whatever we can to try and bring them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. And to hand over to Councillor Saunders for his overall summing up.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Austin. I think it came out loud and clear yesterday at the GPC meeting that there is a need to involve members far more in decisions, and we have taken that on board. And as and when we can, we will involve. And certainly, if you know, it's absolutely right that the cabinet don't necessarily have the overall information to their hand, so it's useful if members can come forward with information that is current and the right information at the right time. Other than that, I would just like to say that, you know, we've looked at all of the figures, we've looked at the proposals. Our ambition was to produce a balanced budget. We believe we produced a balanced budget using prudent, and I would say that don't judge us where we start, judge us where we finish. And our ambition again is to end the financial year 2022-23 without the budget gap that we've experienced over the several last years behind us. And we want to put that budget gap behind us, look forward and keep a balanced budget with the support of all of the budget holders, and then see where we finish up this time next year. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I think that summed it up really well. And I'd like just to say thank you to the efforts of all officers and members that put this together. And I hope that we can gain the support of all members when it comes to voting through the budget on the 10th. We feel that we have been prudent, and we feel that it's a good financial foundation for our future. So it has been moved and seconded. Do I have Cabinet's agreement? Great. Thank you. Item 5, Asset Management Investment Portfolio, to introduce Councillor Rees-Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Members will note agenda item 5 and the report that's within it is in relation to the Westcliff Leisure Park, or as members may know it more fondly as an alternative name as the boating pool in Ramsgate. The existing tenant has a lease with the council for a term of 20 years, which is due to expire in 2034. Council is a new interested party as the leaseholder is looking to surrender the lease, and we've already agreed heads of terms. Members will note that I think it's in Annex 3 of agenda item 5, the proposal by the potential new leaseholders. I think it's an incredibly exciting proposal and a project, particularly as this lease has been surrendered halfway through its term. The proposed new tenants are requesting a new lease for a term of 25 years, which will enable them to continue to invest and develop the property. And the lease will be a fully repairing lease, which I think is incredibly important to note. So they'll be responsible for all repairs and maintenance of the property. The more final thing I'd like to add before reading out the recommendations is that the rental at present is about £10,500 per annum, and it's been agreed that this will stay at the current rent for the first 3 years whilst the proposed tenants invest their money into the development and repair of the property. The recommendation to enter into a newer long-term lease will allow for an uplift in rent after the third year to market value, and then there will be reviews every 5 years, which I think is incredibly important for us as a council to ensure that not only do we receive adequate income for this asset and this building, but that it's able to adjust over time, which particularly in light of COVID I think is incredibly important. So with that in mind, I move forward the 5 recommendations, which are to agree to surrender the current lease agreements with the existing tenant, to agree a new lease with the proposed tenants for an extended term of 25 years at market rent for the premises listed in Annex 1, to give delegated authority to the Director of Property to finalise the head of terms for the lease, to give delegated authority to the Director of Law and Democracy in consultation with the portfolio holder to enter into the relevant agreements on the terms to be agreed, and finally to give delegated authority to the Director of Law and Democracy to prepare and complete the lease and all other ancillary documents on the agreed terms. Therefore, I would like to move this before Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bob Bayford. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Chair. Thank Councillor Pugh for that. And just firstly, could say the only bit of concern I had was you saying that part of that was to the Director of Property, but we don't seem to have at the moment. But anyway, I'll go. Just bear with us for that. But that's just a very minor point. I'm actually agreeing with you, and I, you know, instead of following argue with you, I don't. I actually fully support this, and I have to say that it's the boating pool area, because I use it myself. I use the cafe there, etc. It's a great asset. It's a great asset for the residents and for visitors, and I commend this, and also and commend the deal that the officers have done, and yourself, Councillor Pugh, for bringing this forward. And I think it's a great benefit for Ramsgate, and that's all I wanted to say. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Actually, we've got some hot news on the Director of Property. I'll pass over to the Chief Exec, who can enlighten you into the news.
Thank you, Leader. Just to inform you that we do actually have a Director of Property, an interim Director at the moment, but he is covering the Director of Property role, Stuart Longbottom, who started yesterday. So that's covered off. Thank you.
Do you want to come and respond to Councillor Orban?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Orban. It's refreshing to have so much support, really, particularly in anything we bring to Cabinet or Council. Yeah, well, I know, Councillor Orban, you like to keep me on my toes, and I appreciate that. You know, I completely agree with what you've said. I think that particularly, you know, post-COVID and in the world that we're currently in, I think that part of Ramsgate as well, it's a real opportunity to kind of energise that bit, particularly in with Ramsgate Future and the Levelling Up Fund and everything. I think this is a perfect opportunity. I think over the last couple of summers, there's been the pop-up bar there, which has been incredibly popular. I've been there myself and I've really enjoyed it. And I think it's a great thing that, you know, these proposals have come forward and the new leaseholders have got such a refreshing and kind of new idea of what to do with the site. I think that's great. I think for us as an asset in the council, it's incredibly important that we not only understand if a leaseholder can't complete the full lease. I think that is part of a part of life. But at the same time, it's great that we're encouraging other people to take on the leases and that they're enthusiastic and they want to dedicate so much time and effort and money, of course, investment into our towns and into Ramsgate. So I think it's incredibly great. I mean, you know, there's not much really to argue about, is there? So, you know, I don't really have anything else to say, Councillor Orban, but I hope that anything else I bring to Cabinet, particularly to do with assets in Ramsgate or anywhere else, is this well received. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. Yes, I think it's a great sign for Thanet, the fact that we've got investors, which this is, coming in an industry that is notoriously difficult. Catering, leisure industries is very difficult anyway, and I can speak with great experience about that. At a time when we're just coming out of the pandemic and etc., etc. So they are brave people because it is a difficult, and they will have to work very hard, but I'm sure, and I've really got my eye on these pizzas, so they look really good. So I shall hopefully be up there for one of their first ones. So thank you to everyone for that. So it's been moved and seconded. Do Cabinet agree? So I do believe that concludes our business for the evening, Charles. So I would like to wish you all a good evening and look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you, members.